3, 2, 1. Another big game from Rob Williams as he continues to impress Celtic fans, and of course Brad Stevens as he only played 11 minutes but was able to not only make a difference but also be the topic of this conversation. I'm Joseph Pavone for CLNS Media alongside Jimmy Toscano and Bobby Manning.
Yeah.
Fellas, Rob Williams, again, 11 minutes, but he scored 10 points, 4 rebounds, really had a lot of rah-rah moments in that second half, made a big difference for that second unit as the Celtics stomped all over the Toronto Raptors. But what do we make of Rob Williams, or better yet, what do we make of Brad Stevens' rotations? Rob Williams was the second guy off the bench after Marcus Smart. Of course, fourth quarter saw a lot of garbage time, but for the most part, we can say, right, Brad Stevens stuck to a good 8-man rotation. Is this the rotation, or at least something similar to what we'll see in the postseason? Jimmy, let's start with you. What do you think?
Man, I'm going to have to start, based on Celtics Twitter, I'm going to have to start calling him Throb Williams based on some of the reactions I've seen, especially from our friend Bobby here on the video. But I'm impressed by what I saw. Man, I will be honest. I didn't think that Rob Williams was going to be a huge contributor to this rest of this season because he hasn't really been up to this point. And, the first couple of games of the bubble life, I didn't see anything that stood out. Clearly, I mean, he came in for like 20 seconds just to foul a couple guys 2 games ago. And now all of a sudden, the last 2 games, he's putting up legitimate numbers to the point where we're talking about him being in the playoff rotation. So, I mean, talk about a 180 for this guy, but it's exactly what they need right now, right? The 2 things we've said the Celtics lack, size and depth. And he provides both of those things. So if you can get legitimate minutes from him off the bench where he does become a part of that rotation, I'm all for it. I mean, I'm not there. I don't think I'm quite there yet where other people are, like Bobby, who's itching to talk about him. I know he is, but I am inching closer to being a believer. Certainly more than I was a couple games ago. I think that he really can provide, a presence on the defensive end. And he's not an offensive option, like you're not looking for him, but he does give you that ability to score the easy putback or the lob, obviously, or just easy buckets here and there, which you need sometimes. Bobby,
yeah,
go.
And the rim protection too. We're ready to
Right.
hang Rob Williams jersey where you see this.
I mean, Bobby, I was going to say high percentage shots, but I guess you can start with rim protecting. Go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's
It's intensity too and energy. I talk about the continuation from the Nets game in the other video. They didn't start off defending the way they did for most of that game early. And when he came in, it changed the complexion of the game with some of the contests and blocks. And even, tonight, you talked about this in the postgame, Josue. There wasn't the leaping out of his shoes. Like, this was just a Rob Williams that we hadn't seen yet and playing on a level that's well above what his second best game in the pros probably ever was, whatever that was. It was a whole new player out here. This matchup probably befit him to some degree because there's a lot of driving wings and penetration, and he's able to just let guys come to him, and he doesn't have to do a lot of leaping out on the perimeter. But he did that well in this one, too. I guess the biggest question for me is this legitimate, or is this just a one-off game for him? Because we haven't seen enough of him. And we get into the Enes Kanter conversation, too. He didn't play in this one, and Williams took some of those secondary bench minutes.
Very interesting.
I'm big on the downside of Kanter. He could have had a bad stretch in the second quarter of this game that made this, down to the wire matchup instead of a 30-point blowout like it was in the third quarter. Rob was able to make this more of like a, middle ground type game. And he wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. Is there like a cold side of Williams that we haven't seen yet just because of the lack of minutes? That's going to be the big question for me because he is inexperienced. He is a rookie. He could have one of those Kanter-esque bad stretches that takes him out of a game for 3 minutes, but we haven't seen it yet. So far, it's just been, middle like against the Nets and really good like tonight.
Yeah, that actually leads into my next question, Bobby. I'm glad you brought up Kanter because Kanter is obviously not only the Celtics' best rebounder, but he's also been one of the top guys for Stevens off that second unit. Jimmy, how do you feel about seeing him get a DNP here? I mean, he played under 5 minutes against the Nets. Now he gets a DNP. Like, is this Brad Stevens' way of saying he doesn't like the matchup between the Celtics and the Raptors with Kanter in the middle of it? Or do you think that he's actually permanently thinking of putting Robert Williams and other guys ahead of Enes Kanter in his rotation for permanently, or at least for the foreseeable.
Sure. Yeah, I think Brad's doing what Brad needs to do, and that's be a coach and try to figure out what's working and what's not. And he obviously saw some, Bobby brought it up, some defensive issues when Kanter is in the game. I mean, we can go back to a few games ago when Kanter's in the game, and all of a sudden, the opposition goes for 10 in a row. I mean, I'm not putting it all on Kanter, but that was kind of the, I guess you could say, belief about him when he came onto the Celtics. He's going to give you offense, but he's also not much of a defensive stopper, to say the least. So I think Brad's trying to figure out, situational play. And tonight the Celtics were up a good amount, where he probably felt like it made more sense to have Rob in there. You didn't need the points, sort of say, from Kanter. And I think he's trying to get Rob's confidence up, trying to get him to believe in himself a little bit and get more comfortable playing meaningful minutes, not just going in garbage time. So that's been the really valuable thing. Now, when it comes to Kanter, I'm still a believer. I still think Kanter is going to be a huge part of this team in the playoffs. I think they need him. I think that, at the very least, he is a big body, because there's going to be points where Daniel Theis is going to pick up 2 early fouls, and they're going to need to go to Kanter. They're not going to be able to stick with Rob for 30 minutes. So I think, Theis had a really good game against the Raptors, so that allowed Stevens to keep him in the game longer and didn't have to go to Kanter sooner. But I think you're going to end up using Theis, Kanter, and Williams in meaningful minutes going forward.
Well, it's great that Theis's run continues. He hits 2 corner threes in this one. He's been that steady force at center. So we don't even have to question who's going to start. It's just the secondary ones. I called Rob a bailout option. I was big on him before the bubble. We got the same name, all that stuff. But he struck me as a bailout option guy. And now I see the way Stevens used him in this one. It almost changes my mind to where if you get behind in a game, Kanter can be a guy who grabs some offensive rebounds, gets you some momentum, hustle plays in there. And Rob's someone who's able to keep a lead steady with his defense, with his steady buckets. I think what we underrate about his last 2 games is he has 18 points in 18 minutes against Brooklyn, 10 points in 11 minutes here. Like, Kanter's seen as more the steady scorer, but he's a guy who shoots like 58% at the net, where Rob's like, probably at 70% this season, given the type of plays he makes.
Joe Sway, one guy we haven't talked about, Grant Williams. What's up with your boy Grant?
Yeah, Grant's in a tough spot right now. I just think Grant, it's tough for him to sort of make a name for himself when guys are showing that they can do exactly what he's been doing all year long. And it sounds unfair to put it that way. That's exactly what am I saying that's wrong about that? I just think when you look at Robert Williams defensively, the way he finishes around the rim, he crosses, he checked the boxes there, right? Defensively, if you need someone to cover the corners, whether we're talking between Romeo and Shemi, it seems like Brad is deciding between those 2 guys. Like, I just don't see a situation where Grant would put himself ahead of those guys unless he just goes off, between the last games here before the postseason and makes a name for himself and starts just going nuts from behind the arc. I think that's the only way you'd really see him snatch up minutes, if he just really became this 3-point scorer who you can constantly rely on.
He'll need the opposite of that 0 for 25 stretch to start the year. He's small. He's offensively limited, and it's great that they got out of him what they did during the regular season. I still look back at that Clippers game that he closed. Awesome defense down the stretch. But we look at Kanter. You love his scoring, Jimmy. I look at Rob. I love his scoring. Grant it's tough to have a near zero on the court offensively, as great as he is defensively. And he gives up size. He's just a very niche matchup guy who I feel like you want to play at the 4, but doesn't fit there all that well when you're taking a wing off the court. It'd be great if he could play the 5, but there's not a lot of matchups where that happens. So he's a tool in Stevens' box at this point if it ends up going in that direction and they find a matchup that fits it. I'm trying to think of one. I mean, it's tough to find. Maybe Houston in the finals. Like, are we going to the finals against Houston? Maybe we'll see him there.
Yeah, he kind of has that big baby feel, but just not as offensively gifted as Big Baby.
He's had a great rookie season. Like, that's fine,
Plus, I don't think he smokes as much weed, too. So, it's good.
Definitely not. Definitely not. He doesn't try to travel with as much either.
Yeah, what was he think? Next video, I guess. All right, let us know what you think, Celtics fans. You know where to hit us up. CLNS Media. I am Joseph Pavone. He is Jimmy Toscano. Bobby Manning. Plenty of Celtics coverage on the way, but this was a big one, so let's react to it.